Started?
Yes. And it looks like
All
this
right.
one is whatever the opposite of a webinar is,
Yes,
whatever
it
the
is a
alternative
meeting.
to webinar is. So
It is
questions
a
about
meeting. Yes.
chat. Yes.
Yes. So welcome to the RDAP business meeting. I'll just do a little bit of the housekeeping. And this is also the 2024 RDAP Summit closing session. Welcome, everyone. So this is a Zoom meeting, so attendees are muted upon entry, and if we kindly ask that you remain muted during the presentation portion of the business meeting. And to ask questions, please use them and put them in the chat, and we'll answer them as they come up when we get to the Q&A session. And when we do get to that session, feel free to raise your hand and we'll be able to answer questions from you live as well. And please indicate the presenter or presenters if you want to address it to someone in particular as well in the chat. The RDAP Research Data Access and Preservation Summit organizers are committed to providing an environment where all attendees can participate fully in the program and activities without fear of harassment or discriminatory behavior of any kind. There is a code of conduct helper available during the session. That is Lindsay Geipin. They are identified as a COC helper in FeedLoop and Zoom, and you may direct messages to them in FeedLoop if you need assistance, or you can direct message them here in the Zoom meeting as well. And they can give you the code of conduct email address or the link to the incident report form if needed. And I'll drop all the important links in the chat, and I'll pass it off to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Tess. Can everyone hear me all right? Cool. Yeah. As is customary, we're having our business meeting to close out the 2024 summit, as Tess was talking about. And before we get started, yay, because I have a humanities background, I've been thinking, I wanted to thank everybody for your attendance. This is really what RDAP is our community. And I think we've done a good job of connecting with each other, even as things have remained virtual for a couple of years. I also just was reflecting how many of the sessions are about sort of looking forward. Our theme is bridging boundaries, which is a spatial metaphor, but also I think speaks to relationships both between technology and also between people, bringing in new generations of data librarians, what's next for those in the career. And so I'm really excited and happy to be here with you today. We're going to do our executive board updates. Then the action committees will provide updates. We have a couple of announcements about next summits, and then we'll have a Q&A. But first, as we're going out of these couple of days of sessions, I did want to do a land acknowledgement and maybe just sort of bring us into presence for this last piece of this virtual seminar. As we know, even though we're engaged in this digitally, all of that is connected to the land. There was a good presentation, I think it was yesterday, talking about data storage and how that has impacts in the physical world. And so I did want to do a quick land acknowledgement. This is based off of language from the Duwamish tribe here. It's modified slightly, but we are arriving here together along with our human and beyond human ancestors and acknowledging the land as an entity, not a property or a resource, and we are part of the land. I reside in the unceded ancestral lands of the Lashute-speaking First People of Seattle, the Duwamish, among other Indigenous people, who are the original stewards of this land and water. I am grateful they carry on that stewardship today. I acknowledge the historical and ongoing reality of physical and cultural genocide, which continue to impact Indigenous peoples and destroy the ecosystem we are part of. I reaffirm my responsibility and commitment to supporting Indigenous peoples to have their stolen lands returned and their livelihoods restored, as well as interrupting the violence of colonialism. I commit to work toward relationships of reciprocity, reparation, rematriation, land back, and right to return on these lands and around the world. Thank you for joining me in that. And now we will move on to the business portion of the meeting. So this is our executive board. I'm the current president for this year, and I'll let, if it's all right, each person sort of unmute and briefly introduce themselves in case you haven't seen them before. Do you want to go next, Tess?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Tess Grydock. I am the current president-elect, and I am a research data and scholarly communications librarian at University of Massachusetts Chan Medical School, pronouns she, her.
Hi, everyone. I'm Reed Name. I'm the Research Data Systems Manager at Purdue University and the treasurer.
I'm Lindsay Guypen. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a data project manager at the Institute for Social Research at the University of Michigan. And then Amy Koschoffer's not here today, but she is our past president.
I don't know her exact title, but she's at the University of Cincinnati. Also, I forgot to say my title, which is now Data Curation Specialist for Humanities, Social Science, and Medicine. All right, so as you may remember, last year at the business meeting, we had met almost all the goals from our inaugural strategic plan, which was from 2020 to 2025. So in the summer last year, membership approved an updated plan. This time it's going to be spanning 3 years instead of 5. But I did want to point to last year's annual report where you can get a more detailed overview of our progress on each goal and to see what we were able to accomplish. In terms of the current strategic plan then, we have 4 goals. The first of which is to establish RDAP in the RDM landscape. The second is to foster sustainable diversity and inclusion. Goal 3 is to improve and refine business practices and policies. And goal 4 is continue to iterate and add to membership value. And I'll be giving just a brief overview of some of the activities that we've done toward each of these goals this year. So in terms of establishing ourselves within the landscape, we've signed on as signatories to several different statements. We've amplified a call through Spark for volunteers to help respond to federal agency calls for information or calls for feedback. We had an ad hoc working group on NIH data management and sharing plan guidance that finished up last year. And we are also continuing to support several other small conferences, such as CEDLs and Empirical Librarians in their registration and payment processing, as well as exploring relationships where we have folks who are representatives both within RDAP and also CARC, which is the Campus Research Computing Consortium, and the RCD Community Builders Group. And actually, a few of us were also doing a brief panel at the Coalition for Academic Scientific Computation meeting that's going on this week as well. In terms of fostering sustainable diversity and inclusion, Unite was we had a town hall on approaching hybridity with the summit last June. We also contracted with a group called Unite, who did an assessment of our summit materials and instructions around accessibility. We've incorporated many of their suggestions. We haven't formalized that connection yet, and we're working with them on getting a version of that report that can be made available at least to membership. As was mentioned at the panel on DEIA training, the anti-racism training that we did with Sophia Lung, this was one of the biggest efforts we did this past year. There were 3 sessions. Those have just finished up, and we'll be continuing to integrate that work moving forward. And then we're also working on finishing and finalizing the Code of Conduct Officer position for the entirety of the year, not just for the summit. Oh, and I missed, we're going to have a little bit more space for discussion of the Hybrid Summit Task Force, but following the town hall, we did also charge a task force from September of last year to January of this year, and they put out a report, which is now accessible with some recommendations for us as we move forward, trying to stay flexible and adaptive in our current environment. For goal 3, around business practices and policies, this is an area where I think we made a lot of progress in our previous strategic plan, and so we've been able to build on that good work. We finished finally our migration of all organizational documents to Google Drive for shared ownership, and we're currently in the process of both setting up a workflow for centralizing tracking of speaker agreements and the web team is working on a reorganization, you may see a request from them to provide feedback on that. If you do, please go ahead and help them with that. And then for goal number 4, around membership value, there's lots of work in progress here. I want to give a shout out to the membership committee, which has been shouldering a lot of work. And we're going to continue thinking as well about our different committees and what pieces they hold and how to divide labor. But they launched the RDAP member directory in January of this year. That's opt-in, but basically you can add now information about yourself to your account on the RDAP site and use that for networking and connecting with others. The DEIA training was also something that we advertised broadly and was open to membership. And so being able to participate in that was a benefit of being a member. And then we're looking forward to work that's being done on an education hub launch, hopefully on the website, as well as putting together a webinar recordings archive. And with that, I will hand it over to Reed.
Thanks, Rachel. I wanted to give a brief overview of the finances as of I think that was last Friday. And so you'll notice that we have quite a bit of expenditures in terms of more than normal, and our total revenue. But one of the things that I want to mention is that we had the 3 wonderful DEIA workshops with Sophia. And so it was kind of a very important expenditure. So that's that. And I believe that we'll see the conference income going up quite a bit after a couple weeks, because some of that is categorization of the different, what's coming from the different streams. So you'll see that down the road. But we're doing pretty well so far for the year, and I will be happy to talk more if anyone's curious about hearing the details of our finances.
Hello. Also just a reminder that all of our documentation for RDAP is publicly available on OSF. We have description of duties of all the different committees, as well as the executive board members, the summit materials, including the video recordings, will be uploaded within the next couple of months. We do get those professionally transcribed, and that does take some time. Our newsletter, as well as the newsletter archive, is on there, and the minutes from our executive board and leadership meetings are on there as well.
And after the summit, the executive board and leadership team is going to continue being very busy. We are, as I'm going to be talking a little bit more on the next slide, we have started our elections recruitment, as well as recruitment for action committee members. We will also be looking to vote on some bylaws updates. As Rachel mentioned, we're going to be adding some language about a code of conduct officer position that would run throughout the year. We're also going to be evaluating how the summit went and developing a plan for how we want to approach next year's summit, which will be virtual, and the summits moving forward. So in regards to elections, the call for nominations is open right now. Hopefully you received an email about that, and it's open until March 31st. And we are accepting nominations for positions of secretary and president-elect. And then the elections will take place April 15th to the 26th. You must be a current member to run or vote, but it is not too late to get that membership paid for and to put in your nomination or to vote later. And if you want more information about either of these positions, feel free to check out the short position descriptions that are linked in these slides, which will be shared with everybody. Or reach out to our current officers. Lindsay and I would be happy to talk with anybody who wants to know more about the secretary and president-elect positions. And I'm sure that Rachel and Amy Koschoffer would be happy to talk more about what it entails when you transition from president-elect to president and then past president. And the nomination form is linked on this slide, as well as linked in the emails that have gone out. As well, we are also doing an action committee recruitment right now. And the descriptions for the different action committees who are going to be hearing from in just a minute are available on the RDAP site. And you'll get to hear a little bit about what they've been doing this past year in a few minutes here. And so these volunteer opportunities they're open all year round. So this is just a call for our annual sort of renewal. And that call is open until April 14th with a volunteer sign-up form. And the standard committee term runs between May 1st and ends June 30th. And so we are seeking volunteers to help plan our RDAP Summit 2026 as well, which we hope to hold in person. And it needs a little bit more preparation. So that's why we're looking for volunteers now. And that action committee will probably start sometime in the fall, though, and might have a extended term all the way into the summit in 2026. So if that's of interest to you, we'd be really excited to have you on our team. And all chairs and members of action committees have to be current RDAP members. That is the only requirement, really. So please feel free to reach out to committees or chairs if you would like more information or have questions. And with that, we're going to turn over the action committees.
Hey, thank you. So I'll be speaking on behalf of myself and Amy and the conference planning committee. We've been a little busy. So we're wrapping up our 4th virtual RDAP Summit. As you heard Tess mention, we are looking at a potential virtual next year and a potential in-person going forward. So please do sign up. We could use help. We have fantastic help, but we could always use more. So other things that we've worked on this year, we were delighted to have another partnership for a second year in a row with NNLM's National Center for Data Services, in which we got to get a window into their wonderful intern program. And we're excited to work with RDAP's DEIA committee to hear about the progress they've made with their diversity workshop series. The sort of biggest change for us this past year was a move to a new platform for the summit. That was to FeedLoop, which we hope you found to be valuable. But we would love to hear feedback on how you found this platform to go. On the back end, it did do a few good things for us. It simplified some of the reviews process for proposals. We did get an integration with Wild Apricot. That's our registration process. So thank you so much to all of the different committees that worked with us on this, especially the website committee was able to work with us on that Wild Apricot integration and really made that functional. It also had some task management improvement processes for working with speakers who presented at this presentation. So stay tuned. We'll have a post-summit survey for you, collect feedback, and help us to plan for our next session. For the next slide. Thank you especially to all the volunteers who contributed to this, and that's both volunteers from our planning committee, but also all the people who contributed to day of work, moderators, code of conduct helpers, and everybody who makes this possible. Here's a list of our committee members.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angel Tong. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a science and engineering librarian at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And myself, along with my co-chair, Barbara Esty, we've been co-chairing the sponsorship committee this past year. And us, along with our committee, we've done a lot of great work with the transition to FeedLoop. We've adjusted our sponsorship packages to offer our sponsors the best experience possible in a new virtual platform. We collaborated with the marketing committee to promote our sponsorship opportunities. And this year, I'm happy to announce that we secured $3,000 in sponsorships and also several hundred in scholarships for attendees. So I will pass it on to Barbara to thank our sponsors.
And we want to thank all of our sponsors for their generous contributions in support of RDAP. They have our warmest thanks and appreciation, and we hope they know how much their support is valued by all of our RDAP members. And so we just want to recognize each one of our sponsors. If we can do the next slide. So we've had this tradition of naming our sponsorship tiers in an alliterative way. And so our committee had spent a lot of time trying to come up with tier names that would sort of embrace the theme and convey the bridging aspect. So we have, constructor, connector, and convener. And so our constructor sponsor is the Center for Open Science. Our next tier are the connectors. We thank the University of Wisconsin-Madison Libraries and Dryad. And our third tier is our conveners, the Illinois University Library, Iowa State University Library, and Cornell University Library. And we can't forget our scholarships of Elsevier, Joshua Fennell of Colgate University, and our RDAP members. Congratulations to all our sponsorship winners. Or recipients. Actually, I think that's probably a better way to put that. And so if you're thinking of a good opportunity to volunteer for an action committee next year, sponsorship is always a good one. And you can see that it does make a difference. Thank you.
Hi, I'm here for talking about marketing. My name is Helen Mary Sheridan, and I, along with my colleague Jennifer Chaput at UMass, are the co-chairs of the marketing committee. This year, we continued to promote RDAP events to members and the data community, so getting the word out about all kinds of events, including this year's summit that we just attended. We promoted the summit to a curated list of listservs, but curation, of course, is an ongoing process, as we all know. If you have, this is where we want to know opinions, if you have a listserv that you love that you think we should know about to promote events like this, and that could be a listserv, it could be a conference, it could be a community. For example, I didn't know about CASC, so that is something that we would definitely be interested in reaching out to those folks in the future. Then tell us about people that we should know so that we can further promote RDAP's activities. And we also reached out to the iSchools to promote those summit scholarships to get students in, hopefully learning about some future opportunities for them. Going forward, we are interested in how you want to learn about RDAP, right? It seems like promotion methods change every year. If you were thinking of email, if you were thinking of social media 2 years ago, let's say, everything is completely different. And so wonderful, PARC or PERC, who knows how to pronounce that? PERAC, put them in the chat. I will take these notes down. But we want to know, PERC, good to know. We want to know how you want to know about RDAP things. So you can reach out to us, you can put things in the chat, and we will probably have yet another survey. Yes, I know that everyone's burned out on surveys. We'll try to make it easy for how to communicate going forward. So thank you so much for that.
Okay, that is me. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Moore. I use he, him. I'm at the University of Washington Health Sciences Library, and I've had the privilege of chairing the web committee this year, along with the wonderful members, CJ, Sarah, Megan, Reed, as well as Matt, who's been our wonderful liaison. I will also put in a plug for our fantastic committee. Please join. We would love to have you. We're a fun bunch. Join the fun. So overall, our committee has really had like a two-pronged approach to our work this year. First is like, how do we improve what we currently have? How do we make it, prettier, more accessible? And the second one is like, how do we better position the website for the future? I think make things more usable, more findable, and a bit more dynamic as we introduce new value for RDAP members. So a few things we've been working on this year. The first is, and a particular shout out to Megan O'Donnell for her work on this, is that she researched and implemented a new website color scheme. One of the core things beyond just making the website a bit more snazzy was to really emphasize accessibility. After I stop speaking, I'll pop a link to the spreadsheet she worked on so we can all bask in all the glory of all the research she did. It's fantastic work, and it's important for us. As a colorblind person, I also very much appreciate the work she's done. Last month, I sent out a call to RDAP members asking for your input on a card sorting exercise. So that's a UX tool to help inform our site architecture. So we received 41 responses, which kind of blew my mind. I'm so grateful. So we're currently analyzing the results, and you'll hear more from that. And the third thing we've been working on is working with a lot of the committees to kind of have a more holistic approach to our website. Rachel mentioned something off the top, and the other committees are going to talk about their work, so I don't want to steal their thunder. But things like the membership directory, the events in the hub, and how do we build the site and really emphasize that. And all this is leading towards our primary goal for 2024, which is to launch the website redesign. As Rachel mentioned, we will probably be tapping into you fine folks for feedback. So if you could give that when it comes, it'd be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Foster. I'm at the University of California, Berkeley. And myself and the fabulous Abigail Gobin are co-chairs of the publishing committee for this year. So two main things for the publishing committee that we wanted to highlight. We publish a quarterly newsletter, goes out January, April, July, and October every year. We encourage you as RDAP members to read that, contribute to it, particularly the feature article. We are always looking for content that members can give, or if there are topics that you'd like to highlight, we definitely welcome your submissions. Also, shout out to Lindsay and Allie, I will say, as the past chair of the publishing committee, for helping us establish a process of archiving the old issues of the newsletter in the OSF documentation and site. So we can provide the link to that, but definitely check that out if you want to catch up on what's happened in the newsletters in the past. The other thing we'd like to highlight is that we will once again be partnering with the Journal of eScience Librarianship, or JESLib, to produce a special issue to highlight all the excellent content from this year's summit. So keep an eye out for a call for submissions for that. We'd love to see submissions for all of those who presented, did research, had great presentations from this year. So please reach out to us. And I will say, if you are interested in joining the publishing committee, we would love to have you. You can be a publishing committee member, help on the newsletter, but we also have guest editor positions if you'd like to be involved specifically with the special issue and work to edit that content. And so I think that's it. Abigail, is there anything else I'm forgetting?
Not that I can think of. I think you got all of it. And I highly recommend having an Erin as your co-chair. So then the two of you can text each other behind the scenes and say, what did I forget? What did I forget? What did I forget?
Hi, I'm Kat Kozier. I'm a data librarian at UC Riverside, and I've been co-chairing the Education and Resources Committee with Kristen Briney this year. Thanks to everyone who's made our events successful. They've been wonderful. We've held a variety of event types this year: webinars, informal discussions through coffee clutches, more formalized journal club meeting where we also use this tool Hypothesis to help the discussion, and then the pre-summit workshops. Next month, we're also sponsoring another webinar, and also will open the call for next year's webinars. We're getting an early start on that. So if there's a topic you're interested in presenting on, perhaps an expansion or continuation of a discussion held during the summit, please submit a proposal. Also coming soon by summer is the RDAP Hub, Education Hub, which will be on the website and contain information about recommended and favorite data resources to support our membership in the wide variety of data roles that we all hold. And thank you everyone who has responded to that survey. And everyone else is doing a shout out for members of the committee. So I'm going to say that also. We were able to do a lot of different things because of our committee. It was great. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sheila Rabin. I am one of the co-chairs of the RDAP Membership Committee. My other co-chair, Emma Scott, is also on the call with us. So just to give you a little bit of an overview of what the RDAP membership committee has been up to. In 2024 so far, our committee has managed the Summit scholarships process. This year, we had 17 scholarship recipients, and we'll be collecting blog posts from those recipients about their experiences at the summit, so stay tuned for that. We also coordinated the Summit Buddies program. So when you registered for the summit, you saw a question or an option to be part of our Buddies program, which is kind of a mentorship and networking program to connect people who may be new to RDAP or new to the profession with people who have been around for a lot longer. And this year we had 15 groups of buddies. I think this is our third year doing that program. So if you participated in that, definitely stay tuned for the survey that will be sent out, getting your feedback about the summit, because there will be some questions about how that buddies program went for you too. We also coordinated the new member or new to RDAP event that took place earlier this week, and that was very fun. Thanks to all who attended. It's a way for people who are newer to get to know more about RDAP, meet other people, and have some fun and win prizes and play trivia. And we also launched the RDAP member directory. So if you're a member of RDAP, you can, when you sign into the Wild Apricot website, which is the platform that the RDAP website is on, you can find the member directory and find other people who are RDAP members and connect with them. And I'm going to put another link into the chat to go and see some of these RDAP member benefits and ways to join up if you're not a member. For the future, what we're going to be working on next is last year we launched an RDAP member awards program. So there's an option for a volunteer of the year and a work of the year. So that runs on the calendar year. Nominations are open right now for this calendar year. We're about to assess the nominations from 2023 and identify winners. So we'll be doing that next. We're also going to be looking closer at RDAP membership in general and kind of the representation of who are our members, and maybe are there regional areas or types of professionals that we would want to include in our RDAP membership that aren't represented. For example, right now I just checked and we have 269 RDAP members as of today. So we're going to be looking at the makeup and representation there and working on membership drive kind of stuff too. So if any of this sounds like fun to you, we definitely encourage you to join the membership committee. It's very fun. And as you can see, there are a lot of different things that you can be involved in. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Tremintra. I am one of the co-chairs of the DEI committee, along with Mara Sedlins. So I will give you a brief breakdown of what we've been up to this past year. As many folks have mentioned, we put on a wonderful DEI workshop with Sophia Lung and Deborah Yoon Caldwell. It was very well attended. We were able to also build in a panel during Summit, which I know many of y'all attended. It was really, really, really great. And I think we had a great turnout for that. Some of the future work that we are hoping to accomplish is to review the RDAP strategic plan and the diversity plan. We'd also like to brainstorm some ideas for a web presence for the committee. I know the website in general is undergoing some changes, so thinking about those things as well. And then, of course, probably the main task is to discuss how we can incorporate the DEI training takeaways into the broader RDAP community. So those are some of the things that we'll be thinking about. Mara, if you have anything to add, feel free to jump in. I know I was pretty brief, but I know lots of folks touched on the DEIA workshop, and a lot of that work actually started in a previous committee leadership. So when Mara and I were just members of the committee, so this has been as a sort of like penultimate of the work. So now that it is over, it seems it seems kind of wild since we've been working on it for multiple years at this point. So thanks again for leadership for allowing us the funds to put that on for the members.
Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to hop back in here for a minute, as several folks have already not just alluded to, but mentioned. We have plans to do a virtual summit for 2025, and then are hoping to try an in-person summit again in 2026. And I just wanted to take a minute to talk about where those decisions came from. We are following recommendations that came out of the Hybrid Summit Task Force report. Good news for those of you who've been wanting and expressing that you wanted to move back to in-person. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to help us do that. And please do consider volunteering to help make it happen. It's likely going to be a little bit more work than it has been in the past, just reestablishing some of those relationships. I'm sure that the landscape of how venues worked has changed in the time that we've been virtual, as well as most, if not all, of our committee members now have been working on virtual conferences, and there are many differences with in-person. And as Tess mentioned, there's going to be an opportunity to select that as an option if you volunteer for an action committee. But very briefly, the recommendations coming out of the report were that the 2025 summit should continue to be virtual, with the following year planning to go back to in-person. With the idea there, they did look at doing a fully hybrid summit, but I think the consensus was, and you can see represented in the report, that that's actually more work probably than doing 2 conferences in terms of logistics. There's just a lot of complexity there, and what we want to do is be intentional and thoughtful about the choices we make and do a good job with whatever it is that we decide to do. So if we're going to try and go for hybrid, we want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's actually inclusive. And then they also did recommend then a longer lead time for planning that. And so that's why we're going to be calling for folks to volunteer, maybe with the ability to volunteer during this current recruitment, with the idea that that planning would start in the fall. Let's see. There is a graphic here. I don't think I shared with sound, so I don't know if anyone else could hear that. But if we could all, before we move to the Q&A, and I see that some of those are starting to show up in the chat, if we could just take a minute and give a round of virtual applause for everybody who participated in making this happen and putting it on, in choosing a great platform. I also enjoyed the photo booth option, even though it was intimidating at first. And everybody who is a longtime attendee and continues to invest their time and expertise. And we had a panel or workshop this year where some folks have even moved out of the profession, but are coming back to talk to us about what that progression has looked like for them, as well as folks who are new to data librarianship or the data profession, and are branching out sometimes even still as students, which is great. I'm getting a head start on that. Yes, I'll go back to this slide, and I don't know that we designated like a moderator for this, but I'm happy to go back and look at the questions that are coming up in the chat, and see if feel free to anybody else on leadership to jump in. I might direct things to you or to interrupt me if I miss anything.
There's one from Kat Cozier, Rachel, that says, will an in-person event have multiple tracks or go back to single track?
Great question. I think that is something that the planning committee is going to have to decide. And again, one of the reasons that the committee report, I think, recommended sticking with virtual for 2025 is that basically you need to book in-person venues about a year in advance, and you need to have ideas of what you're doing before that. So when we were in person, I believe every time we were in person, we had a single track. And I could see strong arguments for going back to that, especially if we're trying to keep things simplified. But again, I think that's going to be something that's going to be discussed in the actual planning. And so if you have strong opinions about that, please do consider volunteering to help. I see there's also a comment with a couple of upvotes about encouraging hybrid options for folks that don't have funding or don't want to fly. Yep. Those are very considerations that we've been thinking about very carefully. We did, in addition to the town hall, actually, we did a survey of leadership, and we also did one in 2022 that talked about sort of what format considerations would allow people to participate. And the two takeaways I had from both of those membership feedback opportunities were that virtual conferences are more financially accessible in a lot of ways, and that there are things that can't be replicated in the virtual environment around socializing and networking. And so this is not a pivot back to just going to in person. I would say we're trying to think about this as looking forward, not as looking back or moving back. And if we want to do hybrid, I believe that the task force was originally thinking that maybe we would do hybrid and then think about doing in person later on, but actually trying an in-person conference, the idea was that it might be a step on the way to doing hybrid, because we did consult with some other organizations that did fully hybrid conferences. And what we found was there were a lot of logistical challenges and a lot of financial challenges. And the fact that we are an all volunteer organization and that the past couple of years we've seen a lot of people burn out or feel burnt out. We're also trying to be very mindful of the capacity that we have within the organization. But we're definitely, there's also space, I think, again, this will be the committee that plans it. But I know that Midwest Data Librarian Symposium, for instance, like live streamed some of their sessions. So it wasn't fully interactive, but there are still opportunities. And we're also thinking about ways to enhance participation, even for folks who, like when we were in person, folks used to post on Twitter and interact that way, even when they couldn't attend. That's no longer an option in the same way, but we're thinking about and looking at other options. DEIA committee is also calling and all of the committees, I'm pretty sure, have space for new volunteers. Please do consider joining a committee not as a chair is a nice way to sort of ease into this work, I would say. Nina has a comment. Conference and event centers are appallingly expensive to include hybrid options. Yeah, it's really scary how much they charge for technology. Yes. Yeah, actually, the panel that we were in this morning, Abigail and Allie and I, the hotel Wi-Fi just cut out. So we were attending virtually, and then all of a sudden, they were gone. And I think there was a period in which venues were being much more flexible and experimenting with things. I think now that they have also faced probably increased financial losses, right? Like I was supervising a student assistant who was supposed to go to the JCLC conference, I think last year, and it got canceled because of a hurricane. So it's not just the pandemic, but it's also extreme weather events. So there's oftentimes now less flexibility in terms of being able to cancel or change. And of course, venues have found ways to monetize needing extra technology. So yeah, I really do encourage everybody to look at that report. The work that the committee did was really great. They spent a lot of time discussing. There's a references section because there wasn't, at the time that they started this work, there was minimal, I would say, writing out there on considering these decisions. And we really did want to be transparent and make decisions in a way that allows for input and also good stewardship of our resources, of the planet, of our time, all of that. Yes. Be difficult to jump right to hybrid when we haven't even got back to in-person yet. Exactly. There's some conversation going on in the chat here around the hybrid task force report and including from folks who are on that task force. I won't try to read everything out. But I will, yeah, Kristen is mentioning the education committee decided that hybrid workshops would be too logistically challenging just because of the.
I'll come in and verbally say it too for the recording.
Thank you.
So the education committee had a long talk about it, and hybrid just isn't conducive to learning because you have learners in two different formats and you're relying on technology. And so we will, if we do a hybrid summit, we will still offer workshops, but we might do workshops the week before or the week after and have them virtually. So everyone's on the same platform because we really want learning to happen. And I don't think no one thought that the hybrid was going to be good for anybody's learning in a good way.
Yeah. And a lot of what came out, what I appreciated from the task force report was thinking about the ways in which if we're not careful or if we saying that we're making something hybrid isn't enough to make it actually accessible, right? Like it's much easier to put on a hybrid event poorly than it is. Like there's maybe an order of magnitude of effort to make sure that it's actually done well, that everybody feels included and like appropriately able to engage. Yeah, somebody's put in the chat, MDLS in person was great, but regional travel is more affordable. Yep. I would love to see an option for regional in-person events along with live maybe summits or something like that. I think that was outside of the scope of the task force for this year. And I think there are lots of logistical questions there, which is why it didn't end up in the report. But I think that is something that if we could figure out ways to make that happen, whether they were officially RDAP sponsored or maybe just folks make them happen on their own, that could also be an exciting opportunity. Yes. Please, big thank you to the task force. I'm hoping that they will present and continue talking about this in other venues because I think a lot of organizations are in the same spot of having to make these tough decisions. We know that not everybody is going to be happy no matter what we do, but we're trying to be equitable in meeting people's needs, in thinking about what it is that the summit accomplishes, what people come to RDAP for, and how that might look different in the past than it does in the future. We all get to decide that. Yes, there was a suggestion at the end of the task force report potentially about alternating between in-person and virtual as a way to sort of accommodate both the desire for socialization and also to keep things minimally logistically complex for folks to attend. ESIP does that. A couple other groups as well. Oh, RDA is switching to that, says somebody. Okay. Another comment here. Yep, hybrid is difficult. It's lower cost to participate online. Oh, that comment has disappeared while I was reading it. But yeah, I think as we're seeing from the comments here too, that now that many spaces have been having to address and experiment with this, it really is clear the complexities. And I think probably everybody here has attended an event that was some type of hybrid that didn't work well, where you either felt left out because you were online or because you were in person. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot here. I will stop talking. I realized I got caught up in trying to read all the comments and leave some space for other members of leadership or of the task force who might want to weigh in, or if anybody wants to ask a question verbally on the recording, you can raise your hand as well.
There was a question a while ago, Rachel, when you were at the beginning of the presentation. Someone had asked to hear more about the presentation that you, Abigail, and Allie gave at CASC this week. And Allie responded, but I just thought maybe it would be a good opportunity if you just wanted to tell us like how it went, what you talked about, how it was received.
Yeah, thank you. And Abigail and Allie can chime in here too. Basically, somebody at Abigail's institution who is involved in CASC and in organizing. I think this is a similar group of folks who are involved with PERC, but this isn't PERC. This is a meeting that they have. And so we received an invitation to come and speak at their panel to talk about potential alignment between RDAP as an organization and the folks and the roles that they have in their organization. And yeah.
Yeah, so it was my head of research IT. He's part of this group. it was an interesting meeting in that all of the people there, there's no vendors, and they're like, this is a strategy meeting. We're talking about strategy and kind of big picture stuff. So it was kind of a closed room meeting. It was really interesting because we all came in kind of at the end of a session. We're like listening very intently, going, no, keep going. But I know I've already gotten a couple of emails from the group this morning. They're really interested and they were trying to find ways. Himanshu wanted us to try and find ways to connect. And I'll let Deb, I see Deb, she can give more context for CASC. So I'll hand the microphone over to her to talk about their side of things.
Yeah, so CASC has generally been for leadership involved in research computing traditionally, and usually it's like high performance computing directors, that type of thing. And it's less like professional development and more like getting together and working with government. So it's very much more about advocacy and policy than like sharing information like the RDAP Summit is. The PERC conference I recommended is a lot more like the RDAP Summit. It's just, it started from the computing side.
Thanks, Deb. And we did have a couple of folks from there reach out to us afterwards, either with specific questions or somebody at my institution was like, I'm new in my role, I'd like to talk. So hopefully that was a good. It was a little bit hard to gauge. They were also in person and we were virtual, so gauging whether we were answering folks' questions in the ways that we were hoping was a little bit tough. But I am encouraged. And thank you to, Himanshu, who was the one who suggested that we come and attend. It was great to be reached out to by IT folks.
Yeah, if I might do a shameless plug real quick. I am on the committee for PERC 24, but I would encourage a lot of folks here to come because the IT folks are struggling with data just as much. It's just we're like two pieces of the problem, and I'd love to see people talking together more. I think it was Nina did that wonderful presentation about like the language of the Research Administration Office. I think it'd be great if somebody wants to be super ambitious and submit something like that for PERC. They would like it'd be great to hear from the libraries. There's a lot of computing folks over there that don't understand what the library does or how we're all connected.
Yeah. Another piece for us to continue to build on in those relationships. I don't see any other questions coming up in the chat, but is there anybody else from leadership or exec who wants to either chime in on the questions we've had so far or forgot to share something and wants to jump in and mention it? Going once. Going twice. Oh.
Rachel, I'd like to thank you for all of the work that you've done this year, because I know you work so hard and we've really benefited from it.
Thank you. And that's, I got involved with RDAP before I was in a librarian position. I got involved and I stayed involved because it felt welcoming and small enough. And I ran for president because I'd been secretary and knew that it wasn't something I'd have to do alone, but this really has a history of being a collaborative organization which I have to say is great. So thank you. And thanks to everybody. The people, we know this, right? This is part of what we were talking about too, is that the human aspect of things is not going to be replaceable by efficiency. And that I think is in a lot of cases what's motivating. At the NCDS intern panel today, they were talking about that as well. That what keeps you in a space and wanting to engage is feeling connected and feeling supported. And we do that for each other. Just before we let you go, so there's a question about the submission date for JustLib, which will be forthcoming. And then I did also want to talk about, somebody had made a comment above around accessibility, around COVID consciousness, around making sure that we don't unintentionally slip back into sort of business as it used to be. And I just want to reiterate that that's not what we're hoping to do. I think there are part of the hybrid task force charge was to think beyond just the binaries of sort of in-person, I guess there's 3 there, but in-person, virtual, hybrid, because there's such a discrepancy in the amount of labor and finances involved. What can we do that maybe is around the edges of those things too? So regional meetups, if we have a virtual conference, or live streaming pieces, or even, I think that the content piece is the least hard, right? Even if it's a fully in-person event, you can record things, you can potentially make them available. It's the interactivity piece that's a lot more challenging. All right, but yeah, just wanted to make sure that folks knew that we saw that and are thinking about it and are very aware that many other spaces are. I felt very aware that many other spaces I'm in have been moving back to totally in person and even eliminating options to participate virtually, which is not the direction I hope that our field and our world goes in, because I don't think it's what we need. All right. Well, we actually went to the end of the hour. Thank you so much to everybody who attended. I saw at one point we had over 100 people in the business meeting. So I think that's an accomplishment. We hope to see many of you in the sign-up forms and the nomination forms, nominating folks for the RDAP Awards. And we hope to get to work with you on future iterations of our community. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your week and a restful weekend.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah,
Bye,
man.
everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, especially Amy and Anthony and Kristen and Kat, and everybody who was doing stuff to make this happen. It's such a great job. I think I get used to RDAP going pretty smoothly technologically and people being responsive to questions, but that's not how every space is. So thank you. I know how much work that takes too, and coordinating other people.
Big team effort. Big
Yes.
team effort.
Yes.
Bye all.
Bye. Go lay down, all of us. I'm going to save the chat.